The Conservatives today will promise to amend the Equality Act to ensure the protected characteristic of sex is defined as biological sex.
Minister for Women and Equalities, Kemi Badenoch, joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I'm not sure this is a headline issue for many people. We asked this morning what they were most concerned about. This wasn't the issue that came up, but it is a headline in the Daily Mail this morning. Sex is a fact of biology. What are you doing on this issue, and why are you focusing on it at this stage in your general election campaign?
Well, this may not be a headline issue, but for some people it is a very important issue, and we're able to do more than one thing at a time. We've come out with all sorts of different announcements on the economy, on health, national service, and this is yet another one. We have a whole package of policies which we are talking about. But this is one which I'd actually been working on before the election was called. It was delayed because of the case against the Scottish Government. But the real purpose is about re-emphasising the purpose of the law when it was created. Sex, as it's written in the Equality Act, is biological sex. People have been reinterpreting it to mean other things. We've had some court judgments that say it might be legal sex. So we just want to clarify what the status quo is so that people understand what to do and don't need to worry about being sued, for example.
So the Equalities Act 2010 is not the problem. The problem is that people have been wrongly interpreting it since. Is that right?
So the Equality Act has sex as a protected characteristic, and it also provides exemptions for single-sex services. But we've seen lots of employment tribunals, lots of court cases where the word is being used ambiguously, being used to be synonymous with gender. So we are providing clarification about what it means so that public authorities, private institutions know what the law states. There's been much confusion because organisations like Stonewall have put out guidance. People have been measuring themselves against other people's guidance, other people's interpretation of the law. We are emphasising what the law is to make sure that we can protect women and children.
To put this boldly, you are trying to stop trans women accessing women-only spaces.
No, that is not what we're trying to do. We are trying to make sure that single-sex spaces are single-sex spaces, but also making sure it is clear what trans means. There is a protected characteristic of gender reassignment. Many trans people fall under that characteristic, but there are also people who are self-identifying as trans. If Ed decided to put on women's clothes, should he be able to access a women's space? Many people are confused about what all those things mean, and we are creating that clarity in the law and also making it reserved so the devolved governments don't change things. We need to have one law for all of the United Kingdom, not different things in different spaces.
So if you've had gender reassignment as a trans woman, so biologically born in a male body, but having had gender reassignment and have a certificate, then you can access women-only spaces. Because I think that a couple of the examples used, female toilets and rape crisis refuges. You saying that if you are born in a biologically male body, but you have been through gender reassignment, you will be able to access those spaces under this new proposal. But if you identify as a different gender, you will not.
Broadly, that is what we are trying to do. Even things like gender reassignment, people are trying to claim it to mean something else that it doesn't mean. There's a lot of confusion in this space. But remember, it'll be about the service. It'll be about the service provider. So if you, as an organisation, say, this is the service we provide, it is only for biological women, you can't be sued by someone with a gender recognition certificate. There are many service providers who will provide services for women and trans women. It is about making sure that people can do what they want to provide rather than being forced to do something different because other people are abusing the law.
And of course, Minister, we're in an election campaign. So part of the purpose here is to say that there is a difference in your approach and the Labour approach. So just to go back to what Keir Starmer said in March 2022, he said a woman is a female adult. And in addition to that, trans women are women. And that is not just my view, that is actually the law. What you're saying is that he is right if trans women have gone through gender reassignment, then they are women in the eyes of the law, but he's wrong if he says that applies to people who choose to identify as a trans woman. Is that the distinction you're wanting to clarify legally?
It's something like that. It is a very complex, issue. Gender reassignment now doesn't even mean people who are going through surgery. So that's something that I need to make clear. So even as you use that protected characteristic term of gender reassignment, it doesn't mean surgery. This is why there is so much confusion. I'm afraid Keir Starmer, I don't think, really understands the issue. He said all sorts of different things. He said it's not right to say only women can have a cervix. He's flip-flopped on the issue. I think Labour are all over the place on this. We are the only party who understand the issue, and we're trying to bring clarity. We don't like the way that this issue keeps coming up again and again. It's being exploited by all sorts of actors and campaign groups and activists. We want to bring more light and less heat. We want to make sure that not just women and children are protected, but also those people who do suffer from gender dysphoria, who have had their protected characteristic being used and abused by all sorts of bad actors to do things that the law never intended.
But the point of the thing I just read out to you, just kind of, as you said, it's confusing and kind of complicated. When Keir Starmer said a woman is a female adult, and in addition to that, trans women are women, and that's not just my view, that is actually the law. I mean, he's right, isn't he, if he's talking about people who've gone through gender reassignment?
Well, the law as it stands, the last thing that's been stated is the Haldane judgment that says legal sex can be used for the purposes of the Equality Act. That doesn't mean somebody who is a trans woman, because not all trans women have changed their legal sex. This is why we are clarifying. The law in this area is a mess. The Gender Recognition Act 2004, Equality Act of 2010 were written at a time when people used words differently. The GRA uses the word transsexual. Some people find that term offensive today. So we are bringing clarity to it. There is so much confusion. And what you just read out, Ed, is a classic example of some of the confusion that the changes that we will bring in will help to clear up.
But this is really important. And I think, actually, it's important to say this about you, because there'll be some people who will mischaracterise your position. You are saying that somebody can legally change their sex.
At the moment, the law says a legal sex is changed with a gender recognition certificate. But legal sex is not biological sex. We are trying to emphasise that the Equality Act is talking about biological sex. It's what you were born as, your body part. You may change your legal sex at the moment with a certificate, and how that applies in different scenarios. There's a lot of confusion. There's confusion about the terminology. Even the conversation we're having shows that.
Sure. But you are saying that somebody can legally change their sex, aren't you?
You cannot change your sex. You can change your legal sex.
OK.
That's
okay.
What the courts have said.
So you are saying you're happy with people changing their legal sex?
Yes, people can change their legal sex, of course.
I think some people think that you're saying the opposite, that your sex is what you're born with, whereas you're actually saying, no, I want to clarify in law that somebody can change their legal sex. It's not the case if you're a woman, you're always a woman. You want to change the law to be clear that somebody can change their legal sex.
When we do this, we will be able to properly distinguish between sex and gender, which are words that have been used interchangeably in the law, but which now, today, they're used to mean two different things.
I think it's really interesting, though, because I read the newspapers and I assumed you were saying the opposite. I thought you were going to legislate to say that people cannot change their sex at birth, whereas you're actually telling us you're going to clarify the law to say that somebody can change their legal sex, which is very different from what the newspapers say.
I'm sorry, Ed, that's not what I said.
That's what you just said.
We are clarifying the law to say that the Equality Act, when it refers to sex, is talking about biological sex.
Yep.
A gender recognition, I actually think we need to move away from the term legal sex and talk about gender. We have a gender recognition certificate.
I think it was you who used that term, not me.
Yes, because that's what the law is now. So I'm talking about what the law is and how we're trying to clarify it to make it clearer for the future. Right. You can change your gender. Of course you can. That is why we have transgender people. But we want transgender to mean transgender. Sex is immutable. Right. Biological sex is immutable. It doesn't matter what a piece of paper says. You cannot change your sex. But, of course, we as society want people who want to change their gender to be able to do so without fear of discrimination. But we also want those who are providing sex-based services to understand what the law is.
OK, just finally, because I am really no clearer than I was when I started this interview, and I can only apologise to viewers for that. So I'm going to put a viewer's comment to you. I am a trans woman. My GP wants me to go into hospital for a test, which could be cancer. I have anxiety when going near hospitals, as the thought of being on a male ward scares me more than cancer. I've been attacked by men, so my fear is justified. Now, as a trans woman, that is somebody who has been born into a biological male body, but now is a trans woman. Should that trans woman go onto a male ward where they feel threatened and intimidated, or should they go onto a female ward where some women might not want to be on a ward with somebody who was born into a biological male body?
Yes, Susanna, what you've described is exactly the scenario that shows how difficult the space is. And you don't need to apologise for being confused. This is the point we're making, that the law itself is confused and people don't really understand what to do.
But I'm worried about this viewer. Where do they go?
I will come to that. I will come to that in a moment. We are trying to make life easier for everybody, including this person who has written to you. This is a trans woman who says that they've been attacked by men. We have women who are afraid of trans women. We want to make sure that the exceptions can be made for those people who need specialised services. But even the scenario you've described is something that hospitals are having to deal with.
So which ward do they go on to?
They're sending letters about prostate cancer to people who are women because they are trans men.
Which ward do they go on to?
As I said, this is something which the hospitals will be able to provide private spaces. At the moment, we have a scenario where different people in both wards are saying that they don't want to be in them. This is very complex. This is very complex, and this will create clarity. But
we have to leave it there.
We have stopped mixed-sex wards in the NHS. This is something that we have already announced, so that's not an issue.
Kemi, Badenoch, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed. Complicated.
It's very complicated, and this morning we have nurses saying that they're treating people in corridors, so the idea of sort of private spaces for people.
I'm not sure this legislation clears it up.